My advice to anyone with parents, but in particular to parents who have a life-limiting or life-threatening illness, is to have the conversations now that will support you after they've died. So that kind of talk to them in generalized terms about, when you think about dying, what do you believe? Do you think you're going to go to heaven? What kind of funeral do you want? Do you want a cremation or a funeral? What are the things that matter to you? What's your ethical will? What's the kind of belief system you want me to kind of think of? You know, we always kind of talk about transferring our pictures and our furniture, and siblings can have fights that they never speak again over a kind of small picture. But actually, in some ways, the ethical will is more important. Like, get them to write it down, to have conversations with them. And the big thing is not to have regrets, like to say the things like, I love you, to say the things that like, I remember when, and it was so lovely when, and maybe record conversations. So I think it's lovely to have audio or video of our parents, and it can be years before they die, or it can be weeks before they die. I was working with someone whose mother was dying, and she has now lovely memories of lying on the bed beside her, where she read her stories, she read her poems, and she sketched. So she has little pencil drawings of her mum's hands, of the room, and those are lovely, powerful, embodied touchstones to memory that are very comforting and incredibly helpful. I mean, the other thing is, get the basic information, get their passwords, their phone stuff. All of those things create what's incredibly difficult, much more difficult, because you feel like you've lost someone, and then if you can't get into their laptop, you can't get into their phone. So have a place where you put it all. I think I said that last time, but I'll probably say it every time. I've had so many distressed clients who...
Yeah. And I mean, COVID, I've seen in the chat, a lot of people have mentioned how COVID has made so much of this difficult in terms of spending time with parents, or attending a funeral.
Creating memories.
And exactly. Is there any other thoughts about what we can do in this COVID period? So I guess some of it still holds. You can still have the conversations, even though it's not in person. But are there other, and I guess getting getting recordings or videos of pictures, are there other kind of COVID specific thoughts?
I think you can write them letters, send them postcards. I think particularly that generation, and it's lovely to receive a letter because you can go over it. So you can really, every few days postcards. It's such a lovely way of connecting. I would record the video chats that you have. I mean, your parents won't mind. Make sure you put them in the diary. And my big question, so when I work with families where someone is dying, the question I ask is, what are your worries? That's a really good generic question. And if you're someone like my mum, she said nothing, even though she'd been given a terminal diagnosis of cancer, because she didn't like facing reality, my mum, and she never had, and she was not going to now. But somebody else might say, I'm worried about what's going to happen with my cat. Or they might say, I'm frightened of dying. So it's a great way in, and you can ask it tons of times.
And it takes you into really important questions, which is nice. And I suppose the one thing about COVID is it perhaps gives us the sort of excuse or opportunity to have these conversations. It is hard to broach these topics, but COVID puts this, front and center for us all to think about.
But the reason it's hard is because we have this kind of magical thinking that if I talk about death, I will somehow hasten my death or hasten the death of someone I love. But the biggest kind of derailer of grief is regrets. All the things you don't know, all the things you didn't say, all the conversations that you wished you'd have come and haunt you. So it is much better to kind of take a breath, hold that this is frightening. And your parents may have been longing to talk to you, but they were protecting. One of the most difficult things when people are ill is this co-protection that can happen where the parent wants to protect the child and the child is protecting the parent. But then that is experienced as a kind of gap between each other, and you both feel kind of armored with each other, and it's much harder to feel really close and feel really kind of feel each other's empathy when you're shutting down on a lot of what is actually worrying you.